This week on Full Circle Florida, divided we stand. A new study may reveal what's really driving that us versus them mindset, where people pick sides just to back their team, Republican or Democrat, no matter the issue. Is that really who we are, or are the politicians fueling the divide while we're all just looking for real solutions? We'll debate and dig in. Then our political expert, Dr. Susan McManus, joins us to break down the end of the government shutdown, who won, who lost, and whether we'll be right back here again in a few months. Plus, we'll take a look at how the Florida's governor's race is already heating up. And my deep dive conversation this week with Lieutenant Governor Jay Collins. Is he gearing up for a run for governor? He opens up about everything from property insurance to property taxes and what should be done about the rising cost of living in the land of sunshine. All right, let's talk about political division in America. My first guest, political researcher Lisa Miller, she did a fascinating study showing how people can hear the exact same message, but if they're told it came from a Republican or a Democrat, well, their reaction completely changes. So what does that say about who we are as a country? And is division necessarily a bad thing? Maybe it keeps us all honest. After all, we've never exactly been a nation of Stepford wives all nodding in agreement with each other. Here's our conversation. So, Lisa, walk me through the moment people flipped their opinion just because a label got slapped on the exact same sentence. What does that tell us about how tribal we've become in 2025?
Well, it's really a great question. And I started because with the election, the November election, I wanted to understand how the messenger impacted the message. And so I did this little social experiment. But basically what the data found is that our political affiliation is actually now greater than our objectivity, because depending on the messenger, it really clouds how we view the answer by a lot, statistically speaking.
So if folks are basically sort of copy pasting their party's talking points without even reading the policy, are we still debating ideas, or are we just cheering for jerseys at this point?
I love that. And you know what? It has become this idea of loyalty has really replaced this idea of curiosity. And let me give you an example. So I do 1,000 surveys each and every month. And so the experiment was 10 statements, unbranded. So think of it as a Coke and Pepsi test, right? And so unbranded, I asked the consumers questions. But then a third of the group got it brought to you by Democrats. A third of it got brought to you by Republicans. But the thing is, Paul, it was the exact same words. And what happened is if a statement was brought to you by a Republican and you are a Republican, you were way more likely to agree. But those same statements, if they were brought to you by a Democrat and you're a Republican, statistically, it dropped like 20 points. Let me just give you a quick example. So college tuition should be affordable, but taxpayers shouldn't have to pay for that. So when Republicans see that statement brought to you by Republicans, it's 7 in 10 say, I strongly agree. But if that same statement, same words, brought to you by a Democrat, that number among Republicans drops 25 points down to 44%. Well, and the same thing holds true. The same thing holds true on the other side. For Democrats, yeah.
You know, you've got all these people screaming, we've never been this divided before, but your data says that we'll love or hate a statement depending on who we think said it. So is that proof that the division has sort of been baked in for a long time and maybe we're just louder about it now?
Well, it does go back, and another great question. It goes back, honestly, back in 2008 when social media started. And so what's happening is, we know the echo chambers, the more you watch a particular idea or station, you end up getting fed that much more. And again, I go back to just our curiosity. And so I don't know quantitatively if we are more divided in general, but I will tell you the emotion and the fear is louder. And when the fear is louder, that is not only really bad for the country, it's bad for the economy, because we become fearful of each other, but then it's bad just for our humanity and our kindness. And so it's really troubling to me that these gaps that it wasn't surprising, but the magnitude of the gaps, Paul, is what was so, to me, above shocking, even what I was expecting.
Well, at what point does the sort of party blind loyalty stop being, healthy friction and it starts becoming dangerous groupthink?
Well, I think what can happen on this groupthink is that if it dulls our ability to interpret other ideas. So if it dulls our interpretation, we just stop listening. So before we can even get to, is this right or wrong? And there's no right or wrong. The idea of us versus them sadly has become good versus evil. And it's from both parties. The labels that are being created are just really not even appropriate. And so again, that fear happens, us versus them, and that's just team, that's belonging. There's nothing wrong with that.
Well,
But when it becomes amplified, that's a problem.
what if we just took the party labels off every policy tomorrow? I mean, just hypothetically speaking, if we could get rid of the R, get rid of the D, do you think that would make a difference? And would America suddenly agree on more if they didn't have those parameters in front of them all the time?
Well, what I wanted to encourage everybody out there is do your own little social experiment. Like imagine you had these words, you hear them, and take the label off. It's literally like a Coke Pepsi blind taste test. Take the label off and understand yourself how you process it. So could it be solved overnight? Absolutely not. Is the idea of two parties bad? No. But the idea that we've got to be able to listen more across the board. Otherwise, this division is only going to continue to get louder and more amplified, which honestly today is leading to violence, which is not good.
Lisa Miller, you've given us a lot to think about, and I appreciate your insight. Fascinating study. Thank you so much. The race for Florida governor heating up, more candidates jumping in. Dr. Susan McManus joins me with sharp new insight. Welcome back to Full Circle Florida. Let's bring in our political analyst, Dr. Susan McManus. Okay, the shutdown aftermath. What are we supposed to take away from what happened over the last 2 months in this country, the longest shutdown in U.S. history? Did anyone really win here? We could be back here in January.
The winners were the poor people that were affected by the lockdown, so to speak, shutdown. Because the losers were, in a way, both of the parties, even though early on polls were showing that Republicans were generally blamed for it, but the closer they got and the longer it was shut down, it evened out. And so you look at it, and both parties have animus from the public who feels like, look, I heard several people say, we pay them to do the job, and all they do is fight with each other. It's not a good look. Trust is plummeting, and we're headed into a year of electioneering that's going to really be a test of how well these politicians can talk to the people in a meaningful way.
I'd like to see the word cave be replaced with compromise. I mean, compromise is not a bad thing. It's
right.
The heart of politics. The Epstein files and political leverage, releasing these emails and pushing this issue to the forefront again. Did Democrats just give up their leverage on holding Republicans' feet to the fire on health care subsidies that are about to expire? Should they not have used the Epstein files as their ace in the deck, so to speak, to make sure the GOP follows through on their promise to fund health care?
Well, the timing of their use of it was very noticeable to people because after the Senate voted to open up, before the House voted was when they reintroduced the Epstein issue. So it was the timing of it. But the bottom line is that a vote is likely to be taken this coming week on whether to release all 20,000 pages of it.
All of it.
All of it. And it's going to be real curious because the Speaker of the House has promised that the House is definitely going to take that vote. So we shall see. That could yield a lot of information about which way people are going and how they're going to use it.
All right. Florida's governor's race, as we bring it home to Florida, the race already heating up, more names, more candidates jumping in. A lot of buzz around Lieutenant Governor Jay Collins, who we spoke to on the program this week. What's your take on the field so far?
Well, I'm excited for the people of Florida that they're going to have a choice in both parties. The Democrats now have two named candidates that say David Jolly, and recently Jerry Demings, the black mayor of Orlando, has announced he's going to run for the Democratic nomination. You've already got three Republicans that have announced, Byron Donalds, Paul Renner, and
Fishback?
James Fishback, a
yeah.
brand new candidate, and two more in the wings, Collins and Casey.
Right, Casey DeSantis is the big
So
one.
what it means is the primaries are going to be really, really interesting in Florida politics, which is already adding to a national viewpoint by pundits that Florida's governor's race is going to be one of the top 5 in the country to watch.
Well, more choice for voters. I mean,
Yes.
that's what people want, right?
Absolutely,
I mean, you
yes.
get more than one swing at this to get it right in the end. All
Yes.
right. Dr. McManus, thank you so much for stopping by as always. Appreciate it. Florida's Lieutenant Governor Jay Collins joins me next for a one-on-one interview. We're talking property insurance, taxes, the cost of living, and the big question, is he running for governor? Welcome back. On Veterans Day this week, I sat down with Florida's Lieutenant Governor Jay Collins, a decorated combat veteran who has served his country on the battlefield, and now it looks like he may be gearing up for a new kind of battle, the political kind. Of late, affordability and property taxes have been the conflicts here at home, state level and federal level. It's an issue in Florida. You know, property taxes I know are top of the legislative agenda going into 2026,
Right.
which happens early this year in January. Do we have the details on that nailed down yet? Because I think the concern is this going to be a rush job like the condo bill where you had to retroactively fix it? Do we know what we're getting into?
Sure. Well, the condo bill wasn't necessarily a rush job. It was put in and a lot of time and effort was there. And I think there were some things that had to be tweaked, right? Ultimately, that happens. And I'm glad that we're having that discussion. So here's what I can tell you. There can only be one initiative that moves forward when it comes to property tax. Wherever it ends up, there can only be one. If you have more than that, there's almost 0% chance. Often, I remind myself that we have 2 ears and one mouth for a purpose. When you talk to the citizenry across the state, you know what they tell me? They want property tax relief. They want homesteaded properties to be free and clear of the government. That's the American dream. Our income tax is fantastic. We don't have it, right? Property tax being exempt on your homesteads would be amazing. So why do we think we can do this? It's a relatively small portion of the money that comes from property tax that is actually homesteaded properties. In many counties, it's between 8 and 11%. And those numbers we're going through and measuring every single county. But here's what I want to tell people. We will not and we cannot continue to play games when it comes to our law enforcement, our firefighters, our EMS, our schools, our roads. Stop the games.
Will Democrats have a voice at the table?
They always have
on
a
these
voice at the table.
negotiations? Even though they're a minority party?
Well, they're all in the chamber, right? They show up, they have an opportunity to use their voice. I will tell you what, if you sit there and you do this respectfully and we have a conversation, yes, everyone's voice is heard. And there have been many times when the Democratic Party has brought out something that was truly, okay, like, hey, that's a lesson learned. Great take. And we did it. You saw that happen multiple times this last session where I think it made the bill better. We often forget that the majority of the legislation that comes through the Senate and through the House is bipartisan.
The other big issue that I know is going to be a top priority is property insurance. I know that there's probably a lot of people in the DeSantis administration that probably feel like, what more can we do at this point? They passed a lot of reform a few years ago, but people still tell us every day this is an issue that they're running into. We got lucky this hurricane season. I don't remember the last time that a hurricane did not hit the state of Florida.
Yeah, it's been a few years.
Anywhere, but that's the exception, not the rule. How healthy do you think the market is, and what more can be done on the legislative level to insulate Florida homeowners from disasters?
Fantastic question. I'm actually going to tie it back into property tax at the end. Look, we did tort reform, it worked. 77% of the litigated claims in the country came from the state of Florida. 17% of the claims came from the state. That math doesn't math. I'm a guy with 10 fingers, 5 toes. I'm telling you, the math doesn't math, right? You can only, let's use math to our advantage. That's one. Two, when that was filed or getting ready to pass, people flooded the system, the courts, with claim after claim after claim. There were thousands across the state. That backlog was dynamic and huge. We had to work through that. And then as you mentioned in your point, we got whacked by hurricanes, many ultimately just on top of each other, boom, boom, boom. And we had a lot of issues. We've worked through that. But is the market stable? Yes. We have, I believe, 16 companies. I think there's one more coming in shortly. That'll be 17. Secondary market is opening up. The governor is flying and going to go take a trip to actually go talk about that with secondary reciprocals and other people to draw more people in. Having a couple years without hurricanes would be amazing, but in the end, yes, the market is stabilizing.
There are some that would argue, look, yes, maybe some reform was necessary because it was becoming overwhelming in terms of the litigation. But it also strips, some would say, the power of those who run into a problem with their insurance company and trying to hold them accountable if they're denied coverage.
So I've heard the conversation, I've heard the quotes, but I'll tell you that the bills that were ran to roll back tort reform said in their statements, within the body, their own analysis, that would have raised property insurance, it would have raised insurance across the state. That's the math. We had a sue-happy state. The billboard attorneys were making it very, very hard. That tort reform had to happen. Now, can we have more transparency in rates? Absolutely. I think you'll probably see that this year.
States operate differently than the federal government. Exactly, because otherwise we'd be in a huge mess. I'm curious about your thoughts on how this government shutdown was handled. And should there be more protection from the state if the federal government is going to be so unpredictable and you're going to have lawmakers attack each other and use everyday people as political pawns? Should states like Florida act independently and have their own way to protect themselves?
So what I'll say first off is let's talk about what they were fighting for. They wanted to have more benefits for illegal aliens. Why are we fighting for people who aren't from our country to have more benefits at the expense of our citizens? First off, they also wanted Medicare and Medicaid to not have income verification. Gee, why would that be? The details in the math, right? That's not the right thing to fight for. That was never serious. Don't you think it's odd that they're willing to negotiate as soon as Virginia and New York are done, and now we're free and clear, and they're willing to find and broker a peace deal? It was politics over people.
Aren't the Republicans just as guilty? They don't have a plan to fund.
I'm not absolving them, but yes, there's times when they could have done a whole heck of a lot better.
And it looks like we're going to run into this again in January. I mean,
it's very possible.
2 months.
Very possible. But you know what? That's why state governments matter. I grew up on welfare. I grew up without 2 wooden nickels to rub together. I ate commodity cheese. My family was on and off of food stamps, so if you don't think I understand it, I grew up in it. I lived it. And I pulled myself up, and I worked through the system. The government's not the answer. Working public-private partnerships, elevating people without the government shelling out other people's money to solve problems is the solution.
Governor's race is starting to get crowded.
I heard about that.
Are you planning to run?
Am I planning to run? That's a great question. Here's what I'll tell you. Right now I'm serving as lieutenant governor, 23.5 million people, and I love it. Man, what an absolute blessing. I went through a very laborious process as I laid out to you, and frankly I have everywhere. I've been very transparent. I wish people would listen to the words I use. I pick my words pretty wisely. 3 stages. My family, the area around me, the community, my support structure, and then I wanted to see how my leadership was received. But you know what's been really a blessing to see? As I've gone around this state, people want leadership. They don't want politicians, which is great. I've been in politics for 3.5 years. I know how to lead, though. I know how to solve problems. I know how to stand in there and fight beside people. And frankly, I don't give a crap what your political party is. 23.5 million people, I have to serve, and I get to serve every single one of them, whether they vote for me or not. That matters to me because in my mind, I am always my father's son. I'm always the kid who grew up on welfare. I'm always the kid who had to fight and scratch to get through every single thing. That's a dream. That's worth fighting for. And we are very close to finalizing our goals and plans. Not afraid of the fight, not afraid to serve. But in the end, I want to make sure that as we do this, we're not making this an ego trip for me. I'm done with politicians and egos. It's not about me. It shouldn't be, it never can be. It's about we the people across this state, and what is the vision and the path of success that's going to matter the most for Florida, because as you said, there are always problems. 23.5 million people, more, are moving here every day. They deserve good leadership that cares about them, that has experience similar to them, and has a dream that frees them up to reach their potential, free of the government reaching in and destroying that. So, more to follow.
Sounds like you're close to making a decision.
We're right on that doorstep.
All right. Lieutenant Governor, thank you for your time as always.
Thank you. It's good to see you.
Full Circle Florida continues right after this. Thank you so much for watching us here on Full Circle Florida. We hope you'll join us again next week, and make sure to add our free 24/7 streaming news channel, Tampa Bay 28+. Have a good one.